Happy Saturday, folks. Guess where I just came back from? Give up? That's right. My wife and I and my friend T just got back, and we were genuinely entertained by this movie. This was a movie that was long time coming. This was a movie that was highly anticipated. Ridiculous hype train behind this thing. It was definitely an experience, and it was something that a lot of us, not just in my circle, but obviously the whole world has been looking forward to for some time. So, how was it? So, right off the bat, there's not going to be any spoilers. I'm going to talk about it generally for a minute or two, and then I'll kind of get into the spoiler section. So, there'll actually be an option to skip to kind of the main spoiler content. Generally speaking, there were some solid performances in Will Smith as Deadshot. He was very much a centerpiece in this movie. It was thoroughly enjoyable. While he does have a lot of kind of Will Smith moments, that's kind of what we like him for, you know what I mean? So we didn't mind that much. Harley Quinn, obviously, she embodied Harley very much. We even got to see a little bit in her Harley Quinn costume. It was a bit of a dream sequence, so to speak, but it was still kind of cooler seeing the Harley Quinn costume. Some of Joker's material, as you may or may not have heard from other reviews, the Joker wasn't in a whole lot, but the scenes he did have some kind of cool moments and cool shots as well. Just as strong as some of those performances were, there were some pretty underwhelming performances. Well, wouldn't go so far as to call them useless, but there was definitely some underutilized characters, which we'll get into in kind of the spoiler section. There were a couple things that did bother me about the film. Now, keep in mind, I was all for this movie. You know what I mean? Like I was one of its biggest fanboys, kind of going in. I love DC. I want DC to succeed. But there was some definite stuff that kind of bothered me, which I'll talk about in the spoiler section as well. Last but not least, if you do go see this in the theater, stay until after kind of the animated credit sequence. There is a little bit of a mid-credit sequence that you might find enjoyable. But we'll talk more about that in the spoiler section too. So, you've been forewarned. We're now going to start getting into the spoilers. So, 3, 2, 1. Spoilers! Okay, so, should we talk about a couple things that bothered me first? You know what? No. This was an overall good experience. So let's talk about what we enjoyed about this movie first. First act of this movie was absolutely engaging. The multiple sequences where they were gathering the troops up, the squad up, kind of the scenes where they were coming together and outside of the military gathering area. I could have done with a lot more of that. Those were kind of some of the strongest sequences in the entire movie. We got to see a lot of the characters play out. Every character kind of got to shine in their own way, and we really got to kind of know these characters. A lot of it was broken up by brief 1 to 2 minute backstories for most of the characters, but that they were definitely some of the strongest scenes during kind of the first act. Unfortunately, the trailers focused a lot on that material, so a lot of that we've already seen, including a lot of the one-liners, which were very, very funny in the trailers, but and it might have been my audience, but a lot of the one-liners kind of fell flat because we've already seen it over and over and over again, which is partly our fault for watching the trailers anyway. Will Smith's take on Deadshot, it was fun. As I mentioned in the non-spoiler section, it very much felt like Will Smith. A couple of the one-liners and such, but I mean, I dig Will Smith. You know, it's so it's not necessarily a bad thing. It was kind of welcome. You know, it's been a while since I've kind of seen Will Smith in a role that I really love too. So this was good. It was definitely a strong point. That being said, his action sequence in the first, actually the only real good action sequence in the movie, during the first kind of the zombie, where they first uncovered kind of the zombie humanoids, is when he kind of took over the situation. He was just when he was popping them off, killing. He must have killed like 100 of them. That was awesome. That was probably the best action scene in the entire movie. So props to Will Smith for pulling that off. It was actually, we were all sitting there like, it was a good moment in the movie. I could hear a lot of breath holding. Deadshot's backstory, that it actually felt like it was the most integrated into the main arc of the story too, which was welcome. You know, he had a kind of a soft spot for his dog and whatnot, and we enjoyed that. I was also happy to see him don the mask for more than one scene too. I came into this thinking it was just be kind of a backstory prop he put it on like in one of the main action sequences after. So he actually had a good one-liner with it on too. So it was welcome. It was fun to see him not just showing off his face, but actually getting into the actual costume. So again, props to him. Margot had a really good performance as Harley Quinn. The whole sequence, the whole chase sequence with her and Joker in the car, and then her little interaction with Batman once they fall into the river. That was again one of the more enjoyable parts of the movie. There was a lot of, and that was actually in that scene in particular. There was a lot of the classic Harley one-liners that kind of came off. She had a couple throughout the rest of the movie. She used her classic puddin' a lot too. Puddin', hey puddin'. A few times I felt like I could see, all the rumors we heard about the reshoots and stuff like that. And there was a few times whether or not they claimed that the reshots were regular purposes or normal post production. There was a few times I think I could see what was a reshot, and one in particular actually that stands out in my mind is after she gets done beating one of the zombies' ass in the elevator when she goes up the elevator by herself. She gets off. There's a little bit where she gets off the elevator, and just after she blows her little tuft of hair aside, and she kind of walks between all the squad members, and she goes off, and she kind of turns around, and she's like says something like, "You guys coming?" It kind of felt a little tacked on, like no one in the theater laughed, which kind of made it a little bit more awkward. But I definitely felt like they intended that as kind of like the additional humor that came on. But I might be wrong. That might have been part of the original story. Other than that, like her performance, as I said, she embodied Harley Quinn, so that was well done. Joker. From everything I read beforehand, I wasn't expecting him to be in the movie as much as he actually was. So he was actually in more than I thought he was going to be. It wasn't a lot. He wasn't a main focus at all. He definitely felt the best. He definitely felt the most like I wanted him, I guess, to feel like, or what I imagined from the trailers he would be, like that total psychopathic, like just fun, laughing psychopathic behavior. I definitely felt that the most in kind of the backstory scenes between him and Harleen Quinzel. In particular, the scene where he's smiling, he's talking about he wants her to get a machine gun, and he just has this like smile. That was again, we saw it in the trailer, but it was a little more played out in the movie. That was really good. That was the real psychopathic Joker that I wanted to play. But other than that, it was a tease. A lot of the movie was a tease. Like, he had a lot of good moments, but he wasn't in it a lot, which was probably by design. He might be coming back in a different form in one of the other movies. Kind of have to see on that. Also, it was nice to see him outside of his. There was one scene where he was in Harley's vision at the end of the movie, where we get to see him outside of with his makeup off, and I thought it was a nice touch. It was one of Harley Quinn's wishes. Kind of deep-seated wishes was to get married and settle down with him, the Joker. But it was nice to see him without the makeup, and like they weren't scared to kind of put him into a normal human form. So I kind of appreciated that. I thought that was kind of a little bit of a ballsy move, but it didn't affect it whatsoever. Overall, the Joker's bits were fun. There was another great scene where he was messing with Common. I don't know the character's name in the movie, but rapper Common. That was a great example of how getting into an unwinnable conversation and situation with someone with the Joker's mentality, like it just didn't matter what the hell happened. Like, it didn't matter what he said or what he did. Like, he could take his gift of Harley or not. Like, it was an unwinnable situation. So that was a good representation of, I imagine, the Joker would have been, how Jared Leto would play the Joker in this movie. So again, props. They did a good job with the Joker. Special shout out to, and I might be mispronouncing his last name, Ike Barinholtz. Ike Barinholtz's take on Griggs was very enjoyable and provided much needed levity. I was hoping, and we'll get into it a little bit more, I was hoping Captain Boomerang would actually have picked up some of the slack after Griggs exited the movie. They didn't show him die or anything. He wasn't in the movie after a certain point in Act 2, I think. And I was hoping Captain Boomerang would play a bigger role in as far as like the comic relief. I'm not sure if he was actually. This is part of my ignorance. I don't know if Captain Boomerang played a humorous or funny character in the comics, but he definitely felt like he could have been some of the comic relief more so than what he popping open a beer and stuff like that. He felt like they should have had a couple more humor-driven scenes with Captain Boomerang in the movie. Killer Croc had awesome screen presence. He was. I absolutely enjoyed every single moment he was in. All of his one-liners were good. My wife turns to me at one point in the movie and was like, do you think's the scariest one? I'm like, obviously Killer Croc, right? And she's like, yeah. He was good. The makeup job was good. All of his lines were good. He was just a solid presence on the screen. As far as Rick Flag, obviously I'm a big Killing fan, as I mentioned in the previous Suicide video. Big Killing fan, and I enjoyed Joel's. I might be biased, but I enjoyed Joel Kinnaman's portrayal of Rick Flag. I'm not up to speed on Rick Flag in the comics, so I'm interested to kind of know if he did have a relationship with the June Moon in the comics. That'd be, if anyone knows about that, I'd like to be interested in hearing about it. Also, if anyone has any Flag, I'm interested. I would actually like to read some of those. So if anyone has any specific comic recommendations, please let me know. His storyline kind of interests me as well. As far as the actual feels, aside from Will Smith's daughter storyline, which is a main focus, which I enjoyed. It was, not nothing. It was good motivation, right? Your daughters should be a good enough motivation. But as far as feels, right, probably I had the most feels with Diablo's backstory. I mean, it might have been the kids that he fried his kids. I don't know. It might have been. It just felt the most authentic. It was kind of in the scene where in the bar, it kind of it seemed like it dragged on. His story kind of dragged on for maybe about 10 or 15 seconds too long. Other than that, he had the most kind of interesting backstory and motivation. Like when he didn't use his powers for the first half of the movie, I had no problem with that. Like I bought it. Plus, he was frying everybody in the beginning. I mean, things would have been a lot easier, and Deadshot wouldn't have been able to shine in his first action scene. So yeah. Also, if you guys know if did he have a daughter? Did Diablo have a daughter? Kind of that kid and wife storyline in the books, and also did Deadshot have a daughter in this story in the comic books? I'm kind of curious about that as well. Again, I don't know a lot about the backstories of these guys. So that was a lot of the good stuff that we talked about after the movie. I wanted to talk about it with you guys. Now for the stuff that bothered me. I'm a big DC fan. I was rooting for this movie, but there is some stuff that kind of bothered me. You can disagree with me, you know what I mean? Like it's just, stuff that bothered me, it's just stuff as a moviegoer that kind of bothered me. Right off the bat, Enchantress and his brother, like they did not seem like they were the right villain for this movie. The way the brother was tossing soldiers around and stuff like that, and given the main skill set of Suicide Squad, like it literally seemed like Enchantress was just way too overpowered. Like they were just tossing around. Like these guys were metahumans, but like not that metahuman. Like after she brought in the brother, like I just felt like the brother could demolish everything. Like they seemed like the wrong villains for this movie. Like the whole end scene was filled with like these down periods where like they were talking and doing stuff, and the Enchantress's brother just easily, I felt like, could have wiped the floor with the squad. That being said, I really love the way Kara looks as Enchantress, even in the end, and her kind of made up Enchantress, the evolved Enchantress look. It just seemed like it was overpowered. It seemed like they easily could have done away with the squad's efforts, but what are you gonna do? Katana. I mean, what the fuck? Like she just jumps on the plane, like her entrance was out of nowhere, which wouldn't have been so bad, but then the filmmakers had to toss in this 5-second backstory. Like, I mean, she seems like an interesting character, and she probably is a really interesting character, but that her backstory really, again, seemed tacked on. I love Eminem. I've always liked Eminem. I've enjoyed his music. His jam in the middle of when all of them are kind of putting on their gear and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, that took me out of it. My friend actually liked it. I think my wife liked it too. For me, this is a personal thing. It seemed like out of place with the other 70s and 60s. A couple of them. I rather they would have went that route, kept with that route. Small thing, not a big deal. All right, can we have an honest conversation about Captain Boomerang? Like, how useless was he in this movie? Like, he just felt useless. Again, if they used him as more comic relief in like the second act and third act, would have been a much more enjoyable presence. Like I didn't hate him in the movie at all. Like again, don't kill me. I think it's probably one of Jai Courtney's better roles in a long time, better performances in a long time. But he throws boomerangs. You know what I mean? Like I don't think he was stabbing people and swiping some of the zombies, but he was pretty useless against Enchantress altogether. Of course, my logic, everyone should have been useless against Enchantress. So I don't know. He's part of the squad. I get it. He's just in there. He was just in there doing stuff. Also, what the hell machine was Enchantress talking about? Like, what was that whole end sequence about? Was the machine the pretty anti-gravity light show? Like, was that the machine? Was it like I'm still, like, I was talking about it with T and my wife afterwards, and we still can't really figure out what the hell the machine was. It must have been like the twirling. I would love for someone to tell me. Also, going in expecting an action movie, I thought was a reasonable expectation for Suicide Squad. And after seeing Deadshot's kind of brilliant again, it's like one of the best action sequences in the movie. Other than that, there wasn't, even including the ending, there wasn't a lot of memorable action scenes. This was pretty much a consensus. So we actually talked to a couple people after as well. That first action sequence with all the zombies when they first discovered the zombie-ish people, I think that was widely considered to be the best action sequence in the movie. So I mean, as far as an action movie, it is an action movie, but I think there could have been maybe a little bit more choreography. This kind of plays into my next point, which is all the cool henchman costumes were in parts of the backstory. I was kind of hoping for kind of a raw villain behavior to be in the main story, like all that, like the henchmen and the cool costume, the eyeballs and the panda, and all that stuff would be part of the main story. It really would have been kind of a cool, like a longer sequence with those the hostile takeovers and stuff. Like that would have been some cool additional longer action sequences if that was in the main story. But I mean, they were in the movie, so I mean, point being, I enjoyed them. The trailers made me think that it was going to be part of the main story, which I was kind of excited for. So I was a little bit let down that they were kind of backstory stuff, the Joker's henchmen. Also, there's this cool shot in the very last trailer, and the Joker kind of has like a burnt face, or burnt left-hand side of the face. And it looks like he's pulling a pin on like a grenade or something. I didn't see that anywhere in the movie. In fact, there was a lot of scenes that were kind of cut out of the movie. Previously, when I was talking about Griggs, when the Joker's kind of messing with Griggs, like there's a classic scene from the trailer where he's like, "I can't wait to show you my toys," and he's like grabbing the back of his head. That was cut out of the movie as well. But yeah, that scene where the Joker is like pulling a grenade, like that seemed like it was. I don't even know where that would have fit in. So I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me. I feel like they cut out a whole scene or something, a whole action sequence with the Joker. Maybe it was because it doesn't look like it was the same scene. Yeah, because he didn't have a burnt face. I thought maybe it was in the helicopter when he was like going crazy with the gun and stuff like that. But yeah, he had like a burnt face, so I'm not sure. Maybe it was just a dirty face. I don't know. Anyway, I was kind of disappointed that wasn't in the final movie. But that's it. That's all the real negative stuff. It's just, and a lot of it's just preference stuff. So I mean, overall, again, we enjoyed the movie. Some other things we noticed, like Slipknot. Like, oh, again, this is spoiler section, so warning again. 3, 2, 1. We know now why there wasn't a big deal made about him, or he wasn't any of the big things. Like, he's pretty much pieced out. I guess I had to make an example of somebody, so at least we got to see him use 2 of his ropes really quick. That was his thing, like the rope guy. Also, my friend T brought this up in the comics and like the traditional Batman behavior, and this is kind of how we perceive Batman, perhaps. But like he's really super protective over his identity usually in the comics and in other animated series. At the very end, how does and I'm kind of skipping ahead to the end credit sequence. How does Amanda Waller know? Justice Squad didn't know its identity. I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, like, I don't know. It's like, seemed like they knew, like, it was a good line by her in the end credit sequence, like, stop working nights. I don't know. It seems like Batman's a little bit too open with his identity right now. So, it's kind of bothered us. That's an overall DC Universe thing, probably. Also, was it me or did El Diablo's alternate form kind of look like a fiery version of Lucio from Overwatch? Like, I don't know. When that came on screen, like, that's the only thing I could think of was, like, Lucio in a fiery form. I don't know if you guys are Overwatch fans. It kind of reminded me of that. Again, and the trailer really seemed to give away a lot of the good one-liners from the movie, so we originally thought that the trailers were kind of, like, keeping the story on hold and stuff like that, which they did, but, like, a lot of the movie we wanted to see what was the interactions between the people. So I mean, they gave a lot of that away in the trailer, or at least a lot of the one-liners in the trailer. So I mean, and again, it might have been my crowd that I watched it with, but like they just didn't. Those lines didn't hit as hard, I guess. Since we all heard them over and over. Amanda Waller is a badass, but up until it was revealed that she was alive at the end, because she was like taken hostage by the Enchantress and her brother. Seriously, I thought like the stories, like remember she's talking about the stories in the last trailer. Rick Flag is like, I've heard stories about you. I didn't think they were true. I thought the stories meant that she was like more badass in this. So I mean, up until the point where she was actually still alive, like I was like, wow, that was kind of a letdown. But she ended up being alive, so that was kind of cool. She's kind of badass. Also, is anyone kind of sick of these movies, devastation movies, where the junk and the debris flies up from the cities, and there may or may not be like some sort of anti-gravity action or like a light beam or something like that? Like, I mean, how many movies can we literally get with kind of central city destruction? That's just a personal thing. In terms of the Joker and the Harleen Quinzel backstory, so to speak, like that was by far one of the most intriguing storylines of the whole movie. It could have been, I feel like it actually could have been its own movie, kind of going through the motions and how you kind of psychologically broke her down and whatnot. I think DC could have definitely benefited from a prequel movie based on that whole storyline. And it's just interesting. Like, that whole thing is just interesting. The relationship. The Flash is kind of growing on me the more I see him in each of these movies. Funny, the time flux scene from the future in Batman v Superman is still kind of threw me off, but the more I see him, the more I can kind of get behind Ezra Miller. Also, for some reason, I thought Scott Eastwood would have played a larger role in this. I think it was because I read an article, came up in my Google News feed. Yeah, definitely. He only had like a couple lines. So he was in, a lot of the action sequence. He only really had a couple lines. He didn't play that large of a role. I thought he would have had a larger part. And going back to the mid-credit sequence, we're in spoiler central here. So the mid-credit sequence was kind of a push toward the Justice League, but it didn't really tease anything, so to speak. Like, it was more photos of like the different Justice League members, actually 2 of them, but there wasn't any further information on them or where they are, anything for the end user, for us to ingest. Like, it was just more for Bruce Wayne's purposes of gathering the Justice League together, getting the Justice League together. Like, I generally think that was the purpose of the Justice League Comic-Con trailer. So that's, I don't know, it seemed kind of, that's all I'll say about that. Question for you guys, for the viewers out there that have read both. Was this more Suicide Squad, like the Suicide Squad comics, or did this have more of a New 52 feel about it? Or maybe I'm even confusing things. Maybe Suicide Squad is part of the New 52. I don't know. I got to get some more clarification on that. Again, I want to read more about like Rick Flag and stuff, so I'm just wondering which storyline, or maybe they're both the same story. I don't know. I need more clarification. I was wondering if you guys knew about that. In the end, my friend, my wife, and I, we had fun with this movie. We went into it knowing that there was a lot of kind of bad critical talk about this movie. But the same thing with Batman versus Superman. We went into it knowing that there was a lot of critical reviews of it as well. Again, that's our fault for letting our expectations get to unreasonable heights. Like we couldn't help it. Like the trailers for Suicide Squad were just so awesome. Like, we thought this movie was going to be kind of mind blowing, and it was good. It was a really good movie that we felt could have just taken it a little bit farther in certain aspects. I think overall, we're still looking forward a bit more to Wonder Woman than Justice League, if that kind of helps gauge where our mindsets are at. But I mean, it's to each their own. In the end, it doesn't matter what I believe, because we're gonna watch anything that DC throws at us anyway. Take our money. All right, guys, that was kind of the overlook of Suicide Squad out in the theaters. You guys should definitely support this movie. It's already kind of shaping up to have a big weekend, so go check it out for yourself. Comment, please. Like if you like the video. If you disagree with stuff, leave a comment. I actually want to talk about stuff. I want to talk about the points that maybe you disagree on, or just press dislike. You can that too, I guess. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed this review. Suicide Squad out.